Welcome to Goal Line FC, and today we pay tribute to a football great. Not just any great, the undisputed king of football. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, commonly called Pele, died at 82, but his legacy in the beautiful game will live on for generations. Pele was the perfect footballer. He had incredible pace, superb balance, limitless flair, poise and near flawless decision making that saw him make the right decisions in the game 9 out of 10 times. Pele's magical football created a new brand of the beautiful game. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell for our latest videos. The most complete player. It was a conflux of attributes that made Pele stand out. With incredible pace, stunning agility and supreme skill, Pele was the perfect footballer. He could run 100 metres in 11 seconds. Pele could push his 5'8" height to a vertical jump of 48 inches. That is ridiculous when the great Michael Jordan could only jump around 48 inches himself. Not only did Pele possess the footballing gift from the gods, he had an unmatched understanding of the game. As we've already established, Pele is the greatest goal scorer ever, but he was also arguably as good in everything else as he was in scoring. Left, right or through the middle, Pele could play everywhere. Pele not only possessed the skills to play in all positions, but we also had an unmatched understanding of roles in the sports. Pele mastered how to do much on the ball with little input. Think of every signature move you know. The Rabona, the Cruyff turn, the Ronaldo flicks, any of them. Pele has done it all. While you'd think every player was just as skillful, Pele had something others did not have. Improvisation. Brazil's 1970 World Cup winning captain Carlos Alberto Torres said his great secret was improvisation. Those little things he did were in one moment. He had an extraordinary perception of the game. Pele could even play in the midfield and even as a goalkeeper. Pele played as a goalkeeper a fair bit of times. He did so about 4 times. In the Brazilian league, substitutions were not particularly allowed. When a keeper was injured, an outfield player had to take his place. Perhaps his most famous goalkeeping moment was when he replaced his goalkeeper after scoring a hat-trick in that game. Players don't just get as complete as that. Pele scored 1,281 goals in 1,363 games. What's crazy is that Pele was just as good as assisting as he was as scoring. Pele did all of this at a time when the understanding of the game was little. Players kicked as hard as rocks. And the media wasn't as relentless as they are today. Pele shone through all of that. Pele shone as the greatest player of all time. It all started for Pele in a little town, Bauru. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, commonly called Pele, was born in Bauru in Sao Paulo in 1940. Pele grew up in football with the colourful carnival of the game shown everywhere in Brazil. His father was a football player himself. Pele's father was nicknamed Didino, thanks to his ability to nod the ball. What Pele did with his feet, his father did with his head. Didino's career was cut short at the tender age of 23 after a career-ending injury to his knee. Although he stopped playing professionally, Didino was grooming his son in the ways of the beautiful game. He took Pele everywhere. In 1950, Pele and his father watched Brazil's game against Uruguay. In that game, Brazil lost to Uruguay and got knocked out of the World Cup. His father was inconsolable, and in the most inspiring ways, a 9-year-old Pele promised to win his father a World Cup. In Pele's famous words, "Don't cry, Dad, I will win the World Cup." 8 years later, Pele would fulfill that promise. Pele earned extra money by working as a servant in a tea shop. Pele was taught to play football by his father and often played with stuffed socks so he couldn't afford a ball. In his early days, Pele would play in different amateur competitions, especially the first futsal, indoor football competition. Pele and his team won the first championship and several others. When he was 14, Pele started playing with the adults, and all this training would prepare Pele for the greatness that was to come. In one of the tournaments he participated in, he was initially considered too young to play, but he eventually went on to end up the top scorer with 14 or 15 goals. That gave me a lot of confidence, Pele said. I knew then not to be afraid of whatever might come. 1 year later, a 15-year-old Pele would be introduced to professional football, and the next chapter of his life would begin. Triple World Cup glory. Remember Pele's words? Don't cry, Dad, I will win the World Cup. And Pele fulfilled his promise. In his first World Cup, Pele made himself a symbol of Brazilian football. As most people of our generation would think, Brazil had always been a footballing powerhouse. But it's always been the case. Before Pele participated in his first World Cup as a 17-year-old, Brazil had never won the World Cup. They came close on a few occasions, notably in their loss against Uruguay. This tragedy was called the Maracanazo, a national tragedy. All signs of Brazil's inferiority on the world stage faded as a 17-year-old Pele got called up to the national team by Vincent Viola. Pele was the youngest player at that World Cup. Pele was called up despite being unable to play for the first 2 games as he was injured at the time. It was sensational how valuable the 17-year-old Pele was. At 16, he had scored 48 goals in 31 games. He had also scored 75 goals for Santos in the calendar year. Not bad for a 17-year-old, right? Bear in mind, Pele was far from the finished article then. In the first 2 games, Brazil won against Austria and drew with England. Senior members of the 1958 Brazil squad convinced the coach to start Pele in the 3rd group stage match. Although Pele did not score, he put the markers down for what the world could expect from a truly talented player. Pele kept his place in the team for the quarter-final, where he scored the only goal against a great Wales team. In the semi-final, Pele added to his growing reputation, scoring a hat-trick against a formidable France team. In the final game against Sweden, Pele bagged a brace, scoring a total of 6 goals, and at 17, cementing his place as a Brazilian great. That was 6 goals in 4 games for a 17-year-old. Pele was crazy good, and he was just getting started. He also fulfilled his promise to Dondinho, his father. Don't cry, Dad, I will win the World Cup. At the 1962 World Cup, Pele was virtually at the peak of his powers. In the first game, he scored the 2nd goal and assisted the first in his 2-0 opening game win against Mexico. But in the second match against Czechoslovakia, Pele picked up an injury to rule him out of the rest of the tournament. Garrincha would step up, winning the World Cup for Brazil. By 1970, Pele returned to the world stage once again. Before that, he'd vowed never to participate in the World Cup again due to the hard treatments he received in the previous 2 World Cups. In this star-studded team, Pele was the brightest star of them all. He shone at the competition, scoring 5 goals and setting up a further 4, winning his 3rd World Cup. You heard that right, 3 World Cups at 29. Pele had rewritten Brazil's football history and laid the foundation for the Ronaldos, the Ronaldinhos and the Rivaldos of the future. Post-retirement, Santos soon began to discover the profits that playing outside Brazil could deliver. They began organising relentless tours worldwide with Pele as the star attraction. This relentless schedule and a barrage of targeted challenges led to Pele's physical decline before he reached 30. Just a few months after leaving Santos and retiring from football, Pele returned to the United States to play for the New York Cosmos for $7 million in a series of expedition matches. After a few years at the New York Cosmos, Pele drew the curtain on an incredible career. After he retired from football, Pele became an ambassador for football. In 2010, he was made the honorary president of the New York Cosmos. In 2016, Pele auctioned more than 1,600 items for a collection he accumulated over the decades and raised £3.6 million for charity. In 2018, Pele founded his charitable organisation, the Pele Foundation, which endeavours to empower impoverished and disenfranchised children from around the globe. Pele was making a mark beyond football. He had transcended football to life in general. Johan Cruyff had this to say: Pele was the only footballer who surpassed the boundaries of logic. Carlos Alberto Torres said this about Pele: his great secret was improvisation. These things he did were in one moment. He had an extraordinary perception of the game. We could summarise Pele's impact on football through the famous words of Johan Cruyff stating, "Pele was the only footballer who surpassed the boundaries of logic." And he truly did in all 82 years of his life. At his best, Pele was terrifying to play against and glorious to watch. He could evade vicious tackles at the time, play against the meanest defenders and humiliate the most confident defenders at the time. Pele took the world on a journey of beautiful football when there were no marketing partnerships, no advertisement and no constant media shots, but just football. Magical football. In the words of the great man himself, football is a gift from God. Just like the musicians, you have to take care of your health and respect your opponents. If you do all that, you'll be a great player. No one can stop you. And no one did stop Pele. As long as we see players play and score magical goals with magnificent technique, we see Pele play. The undisputed king of football lives forever. Did you enjoy this video? How does Pele rank in your all-time list? Let us know in the comment section below, and be sure to like, give recommendation on what videos you'd like to see next, and subscribe to keep an eye out for our latest videos. Until next time.